Welcome to the podcast, everybody. So what I've got for you today, did you happen to see a video where Ben Shapiro teaches politics to kids?
No.
It's Ben Shapiro sits down with, I assume they're a bunch of kindergartners,
Okay.
roughly that age, and they ask him questions, he answers questions. It's supposed to be funny because how do you explain these concepts to kids? But what becomes apparent very quickly is that the parents that have allowed their kids to be on camera with Ben Shapiro all share a particular political persuasion, or mostly do. And so he's like, who is the president? Ben asks them, and they go, one of them shouts, "Unfortunately, Joe Biden." And it's this little kindergartner who has no idea about the world, but has strong political beliefs. And I was like, if that little kid doesn't grow up and never change his beliefs, he won't be like the rest of us, which is what I'm trying to say with all the negatives, without all the negatives, is that is how we all get our political beliefs. We're these little uninformed children who just, unfortunately, this side that my mom and dad told me to like, and most of us just repeat that throughout our life. Then some people, there's another cohort that go to college and learn that their parents were wrong and the world is exactly the opposite of what they thought, who swing the other direction. But I feel like it highlighted how uninformed, tribal, and reactionary political beliefs are, which I just thought was sad, honestly, that these kids have feelings about Joe Biden. I thought was really a shame. And then the sort of sponsor in the video is Conservakids, which is these books that teach good values to kids. Yeah. It's just really sad. Just this fight. And I actually think that the woke crowd has been doing this very, very well, which is training teachers to train kids how the world works. And there's this obvious pushback from Conservakids and other things like it, just to try to own the reflex response of a generation. Mm-hmm. And it was almost impossible for me to imagine a YouTube video succeeded of someone teaching kids critical thinking skills of why is it unfortunate that Joe Biden is president? Interesting. So you don't really know that. So maybe it's more of we're not really sure if he's good until we do more research and find out. But of course that video would never get made.
Yeah. Well, because no one would want to watch it.
Yes. And I thought that was interesting. And then I was hearing news about people are trying to quote unquote ban books from school curriculums in Tennessee. They're trying to remove one Holocaust.
This is a nonstop battle. I feel like every year of my entire life, someone somewhere has been trying to ban a book.
Yes. Well, the first thing I thought, I was like, okay, one, it's actually not banning. They're trying to get it removed from a school curriculum, which is very different from a book banning, which is the government practically compels. Technically, you're able to do homeschool, but the government socially compels you. And if you have a job, it's very tough to do anything else, to have your kid go to the school. And obviously, if you look at these videos, people want to inculcate their kids with a set of beliefs, and then there's a fight over which set of beliefs they're going to be inculcated with. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's both sides. You see, can't have Huck Finn because it has these bad words, can't have Mouse because it's got bad themes, and then other people say you're trying to ban books and control the kids, and it's like, yeah, no shit. we're all in this never-ending war to not teach critical thinking and instead have an army of unthinking, reactive teenagers that come out into the world and just spout the things that their predecessors told them to believe, which I just thought was, man, what a bummer of a state where people are so eager to have culture warriors that they don't want to create free, independent thinkers in their children and
that's
society.
That's the problem, is that the parents are going, it's life or death, basically, that my kid think Joe Biden is a monster, or it's life or death that they believe in creationism and not evolution. And so then as the parents, they go, it is much more important that they end up on the right belief than that we teach them why or how to think, because for whatever reason, that belief is life or death to the parent, and they would be ashamed or have to excommunicate their kid if they felt differently. And so it's like, no matter what happens in life, no matter what facts come your way, you have to believe this, because otherwise something awful will occur.
I think
that's the stakes that the parents
are just those grown-up little kids, by the way. They're just those little kids that don't really have good epistemological ways of understanding the world and what is good, what is bad. Would you hate this policy if it came out of your person, if read with different spin? We have across the street from my neighborhood, which is all now little kids, because like my generation has moved out. There's these little kids.
Where you grew up, you mean?
Yeah. The house across the street from where I live. And my dad says they have, during the election, they had like this, they had this BB gun, and they would put targets out there with Joe Biden's face on it. And they were like 5 and 7, you know, these little boys just like shooting Joe Biden's face. Be like, yeah, get him. It's, of course, they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And my dad was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's sad.
This is crazy. I just thought that, I don't have anything other than that is a real bummer. And that is how you get continued generations of people in pitched battles that they are not really capable of arguing for very well.
Well, what is the solution? Because the unfortunate fact is that most people aren't smart. If you're going to call smart above average intelligence, then obviously most people are of average intelligence or below average intelligence. You know, I mean, the bell curve is like 30% smart and 70% not. So people don't necessarily have the ability to wrap their heads around complex issues. So it's not like you can go stop this from occurring. You can't educate the parents. Hey, listen, you're caught up in a cycle that because of the way your parents raised you, you have these beliefs that aren't really founded. You're passing that on to your child, much like someone passes trauma on. And so your kid is going to end up with these beliefs, and it's not going to, the parent's just going to go, the fuck out of my house.
Well, certainly there's no money in doing that. Like all of the money is in vote for me and my party, which is, it's really helpful to have zealots. You don't want, all votes are created equal. Smart votes don't get you in the White House anymore. So
you just want someone that's
forget
never going to leave the party.
Yeah. What's the cheapest way to get a vote? To make a zealot. You know, that's actually way cheaper than like, let's educate critical thinking and then recognize that not all the votes that I've spent money educating are going to break my way.
Yeah, the best
That's
thing
just
to do,
a losing strategy.
Just create a human who votes Democrat every election, no matter who's running, or who votes Republican every election, no matter who's running.
Assuming that, what you want is for your side to win.
Right.
What could you do? I don't know, honestly. I don't think that it's kind of, I think until the structure of how people are elected win or the two-party system changes, that is an intractable problem. And as you know, as long as there's money in politics, this is what happens when these guys really want to win. These guys really want to win. They're able to spend money in order to do it. They're going to go, what's the cheapest way? And this is going to be the cheaper way.
Yeah, and you saw when Bernie Sanders was running, people also, every issue is complicated. And so when someone says, are you going to raise taxes? The first time Bernie was running for president, he goes, okay, well, I am going to raise taxes, but the thing is those taxes are going to go into Medicare and universal basic income and things that are going to help raise. So even though you're going to pay more taxes, your life will be better because most of the taxes come from people who are more than you. And everyone just tuned out when he said, I'm going to raise taxes. And so a lot of these issues are so complex that it would be impossible to educate voters on all of them. So just go with, like Bernie learned.
Let alone that any politician can just lie.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Bernie learned, I'm not even suited well to actually try to educate the voters on my opinion. I'm better off just saying, are you going to raise taxes? And then he just goes, I'm going to tax the rich and make life better for the middle class.
It's like no taxes on the middle class, which is like, that's a bite that a section of people can understand. And it's like, this is,
it's also not what he's going to do, by the way. If he were president, he'd probably do what he was originally going to do, which is raise taxes on everyone in a way that affected the rich more. And in his mind helped the middle class and lower class more. He's not going to do what he said, but he changed what he said because what he was saying before was so complicated. Everyone just tuned out when he said, I'm raising taxes.
You know, what's interesting is that like sort of the question
also worth noting, he might've won the nomination anyway, if the Democratic National Convention hadn't screwed him and backed Hillary so hard. So it was partially his pitch and partially corruption.
Yeah. Who knows? I guess the politicians are just trying to hack the human mind. And it seems like, unfortunately, one of the easiest memes, the easiest idea for the mind to latch onto is the bad guys want to kill you. And those are the bad guys. Like that's the easiest concept that anyone can wrap their head around and is very well, is eager to wrap their head around. So if you try to tell, the line between good and evil runs in every human heart, and the Republicans aren't out to kill you, and neither the Democrats, it's like, get out of here. Like the guy that says that they're coming for you, they want your kids, they want your future.
I thought, and I mentioned this on the podcast, I think we even showed the clip, John McCain was so admirable when he ran for president because he refused to do that to Obama, and he also lost. So it's like, this is what we would want. This is the ideal behavior. He refused to say that Obama was not a U.S. citizen born in the U.S. He said he was a great family man with great values. They disagreed on politics. It was awesome, and McCain lost. And so...
Well, we'll see if I wonder if we're out of that era forever, or if this like Donald Trump, because I do think that whatever happened with Trump took politics to a vitriol that might have skipped a stage. It might have just leapt to end of the world, worst president ever, 20 years after George Bush takes us into Iraq and Afghanistan on false pretenses and spends $2 trillion. I'm like, wait a second, you guys were alive for a president that was worse than this? Mm-hmm. I'm so confused why this is so, why you're so confident. You also can't name the vast majority of the presidents, so how do you know that this is the worst president ever?
Yeah. Well, he wasn't, I think it's pretty obvious he wasn't the worst president ever, but he had the worst rhetoric, and that's what people hopped on.
And the rhetoric was then picked up by an opposing media narrative, spun into its condensed, the purest form of sometimes misrepresentation, sometimes not. Like, what is it? The talking points of what he'd said that would make people go crazy. The fine people talking points, which is like, just watch the clip. See if you have the same frustration with these words as you do when you read the headline. Because you won't. Because you'll watch it and you'll go, oh, maybe he's talking about both sides of his mouth, but he certainly wasn't as clear as this headline made it seem. But
also Bush didn't say, Bush said we're going to do this to protect our freedom.
Yeah.
And I literally watched a YouTube video that was made decades later where somebody said the reason we invaded after 9/11 was the reason 9/11 happened was because they didn't like the freedom we had and they wanted to kill us to take our freedom away. It's like, this has been debunked. They literally released a giant document of why 9/11 happened, and you can agree or disagree with it. And 9/11 was a tragedy that shouldn't have happened, but it's weird to throw out all the reasons they said it happened. They go, it's because they hate our freedom.
Yeah, it's like,
but that's the thing, is Bush's rhetoric was great. He never said, I'm going to start a war that's going to deeply indebt the country while I kill 100,000 civilians in foreign countries and thousands of U.S. military personnel will lose their lives for basically no reason before we pull out. That wasn't his rhetoric. So like, his rhetoric was totally on point. Patriot Act, great name. Trump had horrible rhetoric for half the country.
Yeah.
And so even if you go, which one of these people 100 years later hurt the country more as president, that's not what people were basing their hatred on. Mm-hmm. They were basing it on the words they said. And Bush actually, despite the fact that people make fun of him because he doesn't sound intelligent all the time, he had great rhetoric. He picked his words well.
Yeah.
So people largely still don't put him on a list of like worst recent presidents.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's my politics bit. I'm trying to see this. This was this may be tough to describe. I was on Reddit, and there's the SelfAwarewolves subreddit. Have you seen that ever?
Sure. I get the gist of it.
Okay, it's where people say things, and then this subreddit grabs that tweet and goes, "Oh my God, this person is lacking in self-awareness." Haha. So the tweet was that this individual says, "Spotify will mark deceptive info, but how will they decide what's deceptive medical info? Or are they just going to listen to doctors?" And then the comments go, "Ha, what an idiot, like, of course." And I don't know, I feel like I want to take that and put it on self-aware and be like, you think that I understand that on average, doctors are going to be more right than wrong about medical info, but like, you think that because someone has a college degree that they can't be wrong or bought or that they can't get anything wrong, that we need an authoritative board in order to tell us what is true about science and not a process of getting to the truth? I was like a double SelfAwarewolves moment for me, where people lulled at this person for being such an idiot while missing the finer point of if your epistemology and the way that you understand what's true starts and stops at let's listen to the authorities that have been deemed by some sort of system, you're going to get screwed. Not every time, but just on the cases that are edge cases and probably matter a lot, which is a bummer.
Yeah, the WMD's one.
Yeah. Like, let's listen to these guys.
Listen to the authorities.
Listen to the experts. Listen to the intelligence experts.
Positive.
I don't know as good as the intelligence experts.
WMD's there. We were kidding. It turns out.
Food pyramid with breads at the bottom, the most
very
healthy
important.
Food that you need to eat 11 times a day.
It's important to get those empty carbs. I think the problem, though, is that people can't do the epistemology themselves. So the question is, what are they supposed to do? They're not.
Yes, and
I think
not
virologists.
A general
they can't
heuristic.
Do the study themselves. So they go, okay, my options are trust no one, trust a Facebook post, trust a doctor. And they go, this isn't perfect, but if I trust no one, I literally can't get medical help. When I have a stomach ache, I can't take an antibiotic because I haven't done the studies myself. This is untenable. Okay, so now my options are trust a Facebook post, trust a doctor. Well, a doctor at least went to medical school. So given those two options, I'm going to trust the doctor. So I actually don't think it's that bad of a strategy to go.
On average.
Not even like most of the time. Like,
Will a
doctor get this wrong? Some of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Will incentives make it so that a surgeon wants to operate more often than if they weren't incentivized to do surgery? For sure.
Will that come at the cost of your health on occasion? Yes.
But given the options in the world, which is that I'm not going to put the time in to do primary research in a laboratory on COVID and the vaccine because it would take me a decade to catch up. Trusting the doctors is actually the smartest option, given that your other options are never take anything medical and trust people who aren't doctors.
Which isn't the only two options. You know, I mean, the other option is to hold a tentative feeling, and there's a lot of problems with it. One, doctors aren't a monolith. Which doctor should we trust? Well, you should trust the group of them that I say to trust. You know, the Joe Rogan crowd says, well, this guy has a patent on the mRNA vaccine, and this guy is the most published guy in his field, so I'm going to trust those doctors. Now, of course, those aren't the reasons that they trust those doctors. Those are just the excuses that they give for trusting the doctor.
No, listen, for a while, I held off on getting the vaccine because I just said we don't have any data on this. Mm-hmm. But that's not because I distrust the medical community like more so than I distrust other people. That's just because in general, I was like, even if they're trying their best, they could be wrong. Mm-hmm. So I just waited as long as I could to try to get more data. And then obviously we don't have 30 years of data, so who knows? Maybe we all get prostate cancer in 30 years. And it's like, it turns out the vaccine gives you a 100% chance of getting prostate cancer. Mm-hmm. We just don't have the data. But I don't think that's...
Women won't, though. Made out like bandits in that.
Unless the vaccine, what if the vaccine causes prostates to grow in women and then they're cancerous?
That would almost by definition be cancer if it causes them to grow. So
be a very impressive vaccine. So yeah, no, I mean, I understand not wanting to trust everything 100%, but I also do think there's nowhere else to turn. And I think if you don't trust, like, we all trust the medical community is the truth. We might not trust the vaccine, but we turn to the medical community all the time for antibiotics and surgeries and
the degree of certainty that one holds around different things is I think what is, it's clearly not you just trust doctors. I mean, I don't just trust doctors. I mean, you and I have on various occasions, we told stories about second opinions that totally contradicted the first opinion, which is like, okay, which doctor do I trust in this medical, for this particular medical issue?
But also when I got a skin sample and they told me it was skin cancer, I didn't go get a second opinion. And I didn't go, I'm not going to trust the medical community. I went, okay, what's the downside here? I have a scar.
Yes. And
what's the upside here? I don't die.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll let you cut it off. And I paid the guy $1,000
You're doing pro-con analysis. You're investigating this person's incentive structure. There is more than trust the science or trust the doctors going on in the way that you're making decisions, which is important.
But at the end of the day, I weighted that doctor's opinion more than the fact that it didn't hurt. Like I was like, oh, this doesn't hurt. It's growing very slowly. It doesn't feel like cancer to me. I was like, listen, I'll just trust you when you say you cut it off, send it to a lab, and it came back. And I could be totally wrong. But it's not a nice scar. The scar is much worse than the cancer.
And they will find, and I'm not saying this is the case, there will be a doctor that is coming up with false shit in order to do
might have been this doctor. But I'm saying I'm just saying my personal thing is still, I took this, it's on my shoulder. I took the scar and the surgery.
I think it's it's a great starting
point. Get the skin cancer off. It's like defaulting to him, even with the incentives and the fact that I didn't put it under a microscope myself.
Yes. And I don't need to tell the stories, but that is also my position, which is when the doctor told me, because I was having stomach issues, that you don't have enough stomach acid. I said, okay, I believe you. And I took the lidocaine that he gave me because I believed him, and things got worse because I believed this guy. And I went to a gastrointestinal who told me the same thing. Eventually I went to some other woman who told me, you actually need more stomach acid, so you're going to eat these celery blends every day. And I got better so fast. Now I had the same process as you. It didn't serve me well in this time because this guy didn't understand it, or he wanted to eat. This is the tool that he has for the job. Somebody has a stomach issue, too much stomach acid reflux pills. This is how I reflexively know how to do my job. Just the general idea being that I also do trust. I just want to make clear, more often than not, I start with, okay, you know what you're talking about. And that is not a surefire way to get to the truth. And so you can't laugh someone out of the room. I think actually that's one of the toughest things is when, I think it happens on both sides, when you, in order to not have to confront the nuance of someone else's argument, you laugh at it.
Yep.
is a bad habit.
I think the bigger problem is that a lot of the anti-vax people have other rhetoric that doesn't match that necessarily. So for instance, if someone was like, I don't trust the medical community, but I wear an N95 mask out because when I have a cough, let's say, like I have a cough or a cold, I wear an N95 mask because I don't want to give other people COVID in case I do have COVID, or I get tested when I feel sick. If there were like a thoughtful behavior around it, I think people would be totally fine with that person. I think the caricature is the person who, like Sarah Palin, got diagnosed with COVID and then went out to a restaurant 2 days later. And so I think when people hear anti-vax and they themselves believe in the vaccine, what they think the anti-vax person is flippant with other people's health. And you see the photos or memes, you know, some woman's on a plane sending a text saying, she's sending a text being like, on the way home, had to cancel the trip. Turns out we have COVID. Don't tell anybody. She's on an airplane. It's like, this is what people think of when they think of anti-vax, this caricature that does exist, who's very flippant with other people's health. And I think that that's the actual problem people have, that they associate all anti-vax people with, is like, you're selfish and getting us killed. And I actually don't think anyone would have a problem if someone said, I don't trust the vaccine because we don't have that 30-year data, but I mostly quarantine, and if I have a cold or something, I don't go out, or if I go out, I get COVID tested first. No one would have a problem with that person.
I guess, you know, as I'm thinking about it, a good sign that you're doing good thinking around subjects is it's not surefire, because sometimes you're going to nail it the first time, is evolving understandings of things. So for instance, I watched the David Icke, Brian Rose conversation at the beginning of this, and David Icke comes and says, it's 5G and this is a big plan. And I go, look, I don't know. We'll see. But there's some things that I would expect to see if it is in fact 5G. Which
not a lot of COVID in areas without 5G.
Which is like, Korea gonna get crushed by, because it's like through their veins out there. They've got incredible internet access.
India probably gonna be totally fine.
Yeah. I'm going to get it.
I have a 5G
because I'm very hooked into 5G. This person isn't good. Like,
has he come out yet with what his revised explanation
is? Bro, I tried to, for the purpose of this podcast, I sat down and watched 20 minutes of, he did it again about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago with Brian Rose. And I can't do it because 20 minutes in, he hasn't addressed, let's talk about your prior predictions.
He just has new predictions.
No, it's, I got it all right, is what he said. And people are coming out of the woodwork. You knew this. And what he's saying is, you knew this, is that they would use this as an opportunity for more controls, which is like, okay, that was one of your broad hypotheses. But I believe a critical piece of those early things was 5G. So for you to, maybe he gets to it later. I realized at one point I'm only watching this so I can talk about it on the podcast. I find it deeply uninteresting at this point.
Well, I think that that's oftentimes what people will do, is they'll make a bunch of predictions, and then the ones that go right, they say make them look like a genius, and they just never bring up the ones that don't go right. And
to be clear, I haven't watched it. It was like a 3-hour conversation. Maybe he has explanations for or rebuttals to those criticisms. So I don't want to say that that's not in there. I just realized at one point that I felt his characterization in the first 20 minutes of his belief system as they're going to grab power, I thought was a unfair characterization of the hard stance that he took. So to not start with, here's what I said, and you probably are out there going, what's the deal with 5G, which I am. Like, it seemed like he was a guy who was used to, who has been, or maybe felt in that interview, that he was preaching to the choir and not to people.
Well, what did he say when Brian Rose pushed him on it and was like, well, what about the 5G?
Yeah. Again, to be clear, I didn't watch the whole thing. So
that comes later.
There's totally a chance. There's a chance that it does.
Cool.
I don't know. That stuff is, that whole, I'll keep my mouth shut. That I don't have nice things.
What else do you have to say? Any other topics?
So the other topic that I do have, I mentioned this to you. We don't have to talk numbers, but a friend of ours.
I was going to say, shout out. He posted it, so we can say.
We can post the public info.
Shout out to Kevin Espiritu, our friend. He raised $17 million based on his YouTube channel about gardening, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Because what a passion project.
That's not the whole business. He raised that much, which is to say he still owns a chunk of
we
the business.
We won't share any numbers that aren't public, but this is public. He started a passion project because he loves gardening.
It was like hydroponics, dude. And by the way, so just to get
if you told anyone this business idea, by the way, most people would have written it off because it's such a love of the game project. It wasn't about doing blue ocean market research or trying to copy Mr. Beast. It was just doing what he loves.
And I think there's been, so this is just for context. I felt very proud, and I told him, I was like, I feel irrationally proud of this. I feel that because I remember he was one of like the first Charisma on Command private coaching people we had.
Yeah.
Like this is back in the day. And our crew from that early period, it's been really interesting to see. I started now 10 years ago. I was 24 or 25 in Brazil and in New York, and now I'm 34. We were coaching Kevin. We were working with these other guys, and they were all, including us, struggling wannabes, flitting around, trying one thing, trying to figure out another thing. And we bonded not because of any success, but just because we liked similar things.
Yeah.
And it's very
Everyone
cool.
had a dream.
Bro, it's I think cool. And also when I like hate to say this, but I feel like I need to tell the young generation, an ingredient clearly is time to success. And I mean that perseverance and time is, if you look at my friends, we are equally IQ'd, smart, whatever at age 24 and 34. But there is a massive, and I mean like huge curve, especially in the last couple of years. And it wasn't 2-3 years. We were 27. It wasn't really obvious. 28, even us. I was like, how am I going to pay rent in Colombia? It was Colombia. It's not like it was that expensive. When it came time to go get your tattoo, I was like, I can't take the $80 flight to Bogota to come with you. You're like, okay, I will pay you. I will pay you. Like hit the bottom of my bank account years after starting this for the third or fourth time. It's just incredible that with the perseverance that so many of the people from those initial friendships have quote unquote made it. And I think of, we got the JRDs, the jump rope dudes who were friends with us early on. One of our friends started, another guy who I worked with early in coaching started Scribe with Tucker Max, which is he's now left. It's a huge organization that helps ghostwrite books and helps authors write their own books. We've got, it's just awesome. And I could go on and on and on. I don't want to leave anybody out, so I'll stop there. But
yeah, shout out to Kevin. Sold part of his business for $17 million. Chased his passion, loves plants.
I said this to him and he agreed. I was like, I do have friends that have made money by finding market holes and addressing them. And arguably some of the most successful of my friends have done this. But I would say the most reliable route to success is to take something you love and are really into and work on it for 5 to 10 years. That I feel like has not missed. And some people give up the thing that they're really interested in and they go in another direction. But like the weirder it is, it's like the bigger the sale.
Or have your dad be a doctor that tells you that the telemedicine rules changed and start hymns. That's my most successful friend. Yes. And again, that's had
like
a Super Bowl commercial, which I was like, holy shit.
That's like a market need in a whole. And certainly I don't mean to say that my most successful friends are people that just did their passions. That's not true. But I do find
a consistent passion and perseverance is a consistent formula for success.
If you want like guaranteed, they see in my life, they have with my friends, they have been incredibly tied to one another.
Well, people pick what they're, in our examples, these people are good at these. Like the jump rope dudes are really good at jumping rope. But Kevin is really good at.
Again, how did you get really good? It was the passion that got them really good. It was because
some people want to skip. I do think some people want to skip the skill acquisition step. They want to go, I'm passionate about this. I'm not good at it yet. I'm going to start a business on it and coach on it and sell product on it. And that can work some of the time. But I think in a lot of these cases, they had talent because of their passion.
That's what I was trying to say. And if I'm not being clear, yes, the mechanism by which they achieved success is they cared more than pretty much anyone else on the planet. So they eventually got to make the best product on the planet
because
for this particular thing.
Absolutely filthy at jump roping.
Because they cared the most and made the most videos and tried the most and didn't stop when it didn't work originally. And I mean, I like... And our videos, I think, within our niche are, I think, the best videos in that niche. And I think it's because we were stupidly obsessed and coming home and chatting about how this interaction went and that interaction went and why did this happen. And so that same process was playing out with these guys with gardening, jump roping, you name it. So yeah, that's the route that I tend to advise people to go down when they're young, mid-20s trying to figure it out. But it does take time and you can't fake. And this is why I've talked about sort of moving past charisma. I don't think you can fake the passion. You genuinely have to want and care and think about it. I wrote a blog post back in the day, what do you think about in the shower? Which was very useful because people often just daydream there and for me, it was the prior interactions I had and the ones I was about to have and how I could make them as wonderful as possible.
Yeah. So that's why we're now announcing that we're launching an esports team for League of Legends. So we've got me, Charlie, and Justin. We're looking for 2 more to hopefully be good enough to carry us as we're dead weight.
Yeah.
I don't. What do you think about the shower these days?
What do I think about in the shower these days? I think about psychedelic. I mean, this week I have a thing coming up. So that's very much in my...
Yeah, you're going to do psychedelics.
I'm going to have a journey, a session coming up. So that's like constantly in my background.
Interesting. Yeah. Sometimes when I have a session, I don't think about it till the day of.
Oh, no,
I'll literally be in the car and I'm going, oh shit, I'm about to go do MDMA and psilocybin.
No, that's
it just hits me.
But also, I think about D&D sometimes, not all the time. I'd like to. I think it's because we have so many different things going on that I'm not 100% in D&D story. I think if I was a DM...
Oh, for sure, dude. If I was a DM...
I'd be nonstop.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, and this guy could come and he could
do this. I think you should DM, dude.
There's so many... I think the skill I would be best at is broad story strokes.
I agree.
And I'd be bad at everything else.
Let's hear that Scottish accent on air, dude.
All right, it's time to try.
That's just a sneak peek of what you're going to get. That's just a
sneak peek of what you'll get. I say words like foot.
And drunk.
And drinker. Yeah. I have to, after this podcast for the next 2 hours, I'm just going to be in that mode trying to get that oral posture down for the show. So yeah, that's pretty much all that I had this week. Do you have stuff that you want to share?
I got some vaccine stuff. Yeah.
My dog hates Tuesdays because it's podcast day. I mean, this he can handle. This is the first 40 minutes. Is he on camera right now? No. He's sitting with Ben, but these are the worst days. We sit here and then we sit and play D&D. He hates it.
All right, I got some quickies. Pfizer and Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine has received full approval from the FDA. Pretty cool since we all rushed to get it. And they literally hadn't approved it yet. It had an emergency approval, which I thought was kind of bullshit. So listen, we all still might get prostate cancer, but hey, we made it through official approval. We did it. More exciting, kind of for my younger self. I was praying for this when I was very much a free-loving hippie. But the mRNA technology from Moderna's vaccine is being used for the first patients in a clinical trial of an HIV vaccine. Mm-hmm. So that's exciting.
HIV vaccine?
HIV vaccine.
Well,
if they had that shit, I would have been all about it in my 20s.
Well, I feel like they've come a long way with my understanding of HIV prevention. And I don't just mean PrEP, mm-hmm. And then treatment of it, which are effective to effectively suppress the symptoms.
I don't feel weird saying this. I had a friend who was all about sex parties, and his girlfriend and he girlfriend and wife have an open relationship. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was so cool. And I wanted to go to sex parties and see what that was like, but I'm very STD nervous. And so I went on PrEP, which is the medicine that when you take it, it basically eliminates the risk that you get HIV.
That you contract, yeah.
That you contract HIV, yeah. Which I thought was awesome. It's also if you have HIV, you take it and then you basically don't have any symptoms and you don't pass it on to other people.
And I don't want to make it sound like this is a cure-all, but it's effective.
Compared to not having it, apparently it's insanely effective. Yeah. But unfortunately, I had some side effects, and so I couldn't sleep for 3 days because I was really itchy all the time. And I was like, I can't figure out what's going on. I'm having an allergic reaction to something. And then I stopped taking the PrEP, and it immediately went away. Yeah. So I literally couldn't take it because I actually couldn't sleep. My body was going to break down. But I like the idea of being able to have sex with whoever you want without fearing that it'll kill you. So that vaccine's coming out, which is pretty cool. And then the last health-related thing, U.S. diabetes deaths top 100,000 for second straight year. Good for us. So
new record.
Yeah. Wow. COVID is a big problem that we have to solve. I think
that's fascinating. Is that so? Do you have the shape of those numbers? Because what's surprising to me is, given that there's so many comorbidities with COVID, I would expect COVID to hit the overweight population the hardest, which would also coincide with the diabetic population. I think in some cases, not all, which would lower annual diabetes deaths compared to non-COVID years. That's my initial thought.
So we'll remove COVID completely because I know it's a hot button issue people have a lot of opinions on. The U.S. has a problem that nutrition...
Well, sorry, can you answer this original question first? Do you know if diabetes is... So 2 years it tops 100,000. Was it topping it for 4 years, 5 years?
No, second year in a row. This is the...
But it wasn't
3 years
before
ago,
that?
it was not.
Was it 4 years ago? This is my question.
I don't know.
It's like, what's the general shape? Okay. You don't know.
I'm not a diabetes expert.
Got one stat,
Listen,
guy.
man, I read a headline and I liked it.
Okay.
And I think the broader thing is true, though, which is that we are completely ignoring for now all of the heart disease and diabetes and all the preventable deaths that come from sugar and shitty diet. And I just think that's really fascinating because there's a lot of money in those industries that probably pays lobbyists to not make this a big deal. But at some point, it will become you won't be able to look away. You will have to acknowledge that diet is killing Americans.
I'll fight you on that point.
I think I'll make that bet. You want to make a gentleman's wager?
Yeah.
I think it's like cigarettes. They tried really, really hard. They paid for their own studies. They paid to bury medical studies, fought tooth and nail to say cancer was not caused by cigarettes. But at some point, you just go, listen, a lot of people are dying and we need to get people to smoke less. And I think that's where we're going to go, is eventually at some point, it just becomes untenable to go, yeah, obesity is on the rise.
Are people confused about, but this is the thing, like I don't think people are confused that your health is severely, on average, most people, that is severely jeopardized when you're overweight and obese.
Well, people do debate if nutrition causes cancer, which I think it not causes all cancer, but I think it plays a part in cancer.
But that I think it is widely understood that your risk of death by all causes, not all causes, your all-cause death rate, which includes like heart disease, diabetes.
See, I actually don't think so. I think because they love food, convince themselves that it's not that bad or it's not going to happen to them. I actually don't think that.
I think that, is that different than cigarettes? I wonder.
My impression is that all of this health, this like nutrition related death is the number one cause of death in the US. And I don't think most people would know that.
Yes, I think it's weird. I agree with you in that if you asked people to build to the conclusion, they could say all the premises like, is it true that this is likely to cause this? Mm-hmm. Would you agree with this thing that says that, diabetes, that heart disease is the number one killer in America? Would you agree with the fact that most heart disease or a significant portion is caused by these things? If you add all that up, does it make sense that diet is the most important changeable factor that could save or prolong lives in America?
Yeah,
they would get there, but they won't on their own put premise 1, 2, and 3
That's what I'm
together.
saying. So you don't like diet contributes to heart disease, diabetes, cancer, all these things that people lump separately. And so when you look at the death charts or when you're talking about death, people don't freak out about it. And then certainly we don't treat it that way. I mean, you don't look at someone who's feeding their kid poorly and going, you're going to kill your kid. You're going to kill your kid.
When you see lung cancer on a chart, you go smoking.
Yes.
And when you see COVID, you go COVID. Well, and when you see heart disease, you go random act of God.
Yes.
I see what you're saying, is that it doesn't imply in general consciousness the cause like some of these other ones do. And they effectively got smoking and lung cancer to be like twins.
Yeah.
and when
you'd be shocked if someone had lung cancer and wasn't a smoker. You know what I mean? If they died of lung cancer, you'd be like, are they a smoker? No, never a day in their life. That would be so people go, oh wow, what happened?
Yeah. But you say that person had a heart attack. You don't immediately go, well, were they?
And honestly,
diet? Were they
and I think most people get defensive would say, I know a fit person who had a heart attack.
Yeah, it happens.
It's not all heart attacks.
For sure.
Yes, that's not what we're saying. Mm-hmm. We're just saying that a bad diet will lead to a lot of heart attacks. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I think it doesn't get. No one's talking about it. It's just not on the news. It's not in schools really. It's not. There's an epidemic occurring, I think, of malnutrition basically in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And we don't talk about it like that yet. And I think we will.
Any time frame?
I don't know, because I don't know how long the cigarettes thing took. Like our lifetime is an easy bet. I'd even say 20 years is an easy bet. 5 years, I think, is too soon.
To me, it's when there is a significant amount of money that moves to the alternate side. And we're seeing that with the Whole Foods.
Well, is that what happened with cigarettes? Because I actually don't think that's what happened with cigarettes.
No,
I think
I don't know the
evidence just
cigarette
became
story.
Overwhelming. Like they basically just tried to stop the dam. You know what I mean? They tried to stop the flow of water as long as they could. Mm. But I don't think a cigarette, I don't think nicotine patches came out with a bunch of money for the other side, and that's what swung the difference. I could be wrong.
I'd have to learn the cigarette story. I don't really know it. Why there was a push to stop big industry in this case. From where did it come from? I'm not sure. Cool.
So yeah, just thought that was all interesting health stuff. Do you want to talk about the Supreme Court Justice and or Doreen, or you want to hop straight to...
Oh, Doreen.
Those are the two things I have for potential topics.
That's the title of this, is Doreen. So
Doreen and the AntiWork subreddit drama.
I feel like we owe it to our titling process, too.
I don't know that it'll do that well, honestly, but...
Yes, it will.
All right, let's talk about Doreen.
This was... I'll tell you what was weird for me, was the frothiness of this. I watched that on Reddit and went, okay. Like, it didn't I didn't shock, surprise. 25 hours, just like, oh, that's pretty good for AntiWork. I was given the things that I had seen reach the front page from that subreddit. I was not surprised that that was a representative. I was surprised that that was held to be a poor representative of the things that had reached the front page. Now, I'm sure...
For people who don't know, real quick, there's an AntiWork subreddit. Depending on when you joined, it's either a subreddit about revolutionizing the work and the relationship we have with work, or it's a place to bitch about your boss being a shithead, depending on what era you joined in, because the subreddit has evolved. And Fox News hit them up, wanted to talk to their moderator. Pretty obvious why. They just want to make you guys look like idiots and, tell you that the younger generation and the liberals are lazy. That was obvious. The mods went to the subreddit and said, should we go on the interview? Subreddit largely votes, no, please don't do this. One of the mods goes on anyway. And for some reason, it went incredibly viral on Reddit. So that's what happened.
Yeah. I also thought that my first viewing, I was like, this host does not come off good. He's so smug and douchey. I actually didn't think it was as bad for them as it was then received.
Well, I think the problem is that there is a group of people in the U.S. that want to be taken very seriously, that want to change the way labor is treated in the U.S. They want to unionize more. They want to have equity more distributed in a more socialist manner. They think it's incredibly important. They think that most workers in the U.S. are mistreated. And so to them, this is incredibly important to get this message out because it has to come from the populace. The elites and the powers that be will never be the ones to pass that power on. They will never be like, yeah, that's a great idea. Here's my equity and you should unionize so I have less power. So it has to come from the populace. So it's very important how they are perceived by the everyman because they need to get people from both sides. It can't just be a liberal movement. It has to be a working class movement. So I think the reason they were so upset is because the person that went on Fox News was a 30-something-year-old person that lived with their parents in the basement, that was a dog walker.
We don't know in the basement. We don't know that.
Sure, lived with the parents, was a dog walker, and said they wanted to be a philosophy professor, which is the ultimate, even if you have a job like philosophy professor is considered by some people, like a non-contributory job, which I don't think is true, but it's just a very bad spokesperson if your goal is to convince Republican working class people to come join you.
Yeah.
Because it's everything that they
disdain.
It's everything that the people above would say is bad about this movement. So much so, I mean, the common critique is these people are just lazy. And then the mod went on there and her quote was, I think laziness is a virtue.
I agree, though.
It was packaged very poorly.
Yeah, I agree. Yes.
And so the upsetness wasn't, I think the upsetness was, this is exactly not how we want to get into the minds of Republican working class people, that we're trying to go across party lines to have walkouts. Like the only way you get unions and socialism is you walk out together holding hands. And so when the people on that side go, oh, this, I shouldn't take this seriously. This is just a bunch of lazy dog walkers who want to live with their parents. It weakens the movement. That's why I think it was so upsetting.
Sure. I think so too. I just didn't read it that way. I guess as somebody who thought about being a philosophy professor, I didn't have that reaction. Yeah. And
also I think the person it's also just, I think the other reason it caught steam is it's so
peak Reddit
on brand for Reddit. So the person struggled to make eye contact with the camera. They said it's because they were autistic. They're also trans, and they did not look like particularly well kept. They looked a little bit unshowered and greasy. And so it's like, this is exactly what we tease the idea of a Reddit mod is. And so then for them to go on Fox News, it's just like, congrats, you've like hit every stereotype of a Reddit mod and every stereotype of AntiWork.
Yeah.
And it was just too perfect to not go viral, I think.
I guess the other reason I didn't have such a strong reaction is I was a philosophy major. I know a lot of those people that, like you could say to a degree, I think it's Slavoj Žižek has that exact look, unkempt hair. He's had some sort of neurological disease, so when he talks, he's got this like spittle that comes out.
Yeah, he's really well spoken though.
I think could have had the same reaction.
Interesting.
And a summary of a belief that I hold, though it's too condensed. There's very smart people who have written about the fact that hard work is sort of foisted upon you as a virtue in order to get you to be a willing slave to someone else.
That's a way better way to put it than laziness is a virtue.
Yes.
I actually think if Doreen had said, I think hard work is not a virtue, it's a virtue foisted on you by people who want to convince you to work hard without compensating you.
Yeah.
That's a much better argument than, well, I think laziness gets a bad rap. I think laziness is a virtue.
Yeah.
Like, don't say it like that.
It was poorly
Don't say
framed.
it like that.
Yeah, but I guess I did some of the extra work to interpret laziness as a virtue because I'm familiar with that.
Yes, but the question is not what's the charitable way to interpret what this person is trying to say.
How is the target audience going to receive this?
Exactly. And so it's like, yes, when you are trying to understand what the person wants to say, you'll get there accurately, and it's not a bad thing to say. But just ask, what is the average Fox News watcher going to hear? It's that liberal socialist Democrats are lazy.
Want handouts, yeah.
And they want handouts. And it just totally reinforces why they don't like socialism and UBI and all this stuff that would actually help them because they happen to be in the income bracket that it would help. You know what I mean?
I also felt bad. Like that person had a really rough...
Oh, they shut down the subreddit.
Really rough week. And they were apparently one of the long-standing mods, which I don't think they get to do anymore. And I imagine that was a position of that they placed value on and is no longer the case. It was just a rough
I saw
week
apparently
for a 3-minute... I hate when 3 minutes has such a drastic negative impact on anybody's life. Or
there's a sex joke here, but I won't make it.
3 minutes?
Apparently
Stallion.
Apparently the mod was kicked out of being a moderator, but then a new mod whose account had only been active for a day was brought in as the replacement. It's like, we know this is you, Doreen.
Yeah.
So I don't have much else to say, but it was just the biggest news on Reddit for a while, and I thought it was interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Anything else that you had?
Well, yeah, you want to talk about the Supreme Court and Joe Biden, or no?
I don't know a ton about this. I'll say, just that he said.
Well, this was the thing. I'll take you there. Joe Biden, quote, "I've made no decision except one. I will nominate someone incredibly qualified, perfect for the job, and who will be the first black woman to the Supreme Court." And I shorten that a little because he talks at length. But it's like, why don't you just pick the candidate you think is best?
Yeah.
And if that candidate happens to be a black woman, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. But why are you deciding first and foremost the person's race and gender before looking at resumes and throwing out every resume that's not a black woman?
Yeah.
I also think, ironically, this is unconstitutional. So once you elect this person, they're going to have to be a judge on you.
If the case is
because
taken, that would be
what
very
you've done is unconstitutional. You literally can't make hiring decisions based on race and gender.
It's wild.
So I thought that was awesome because they're going to get their first case they're going to get to try is their own hiring.
Do you think so?
No, not actually, but it should. I mean, that is literally unconstitutional.
That would be amazing. Yeah. I am, what is the word? A little bit flabbergasted that this movement has been so effective. And I know that there's going to be arguments over the word racism, but the way that I understand it is that this is a clear case of racism and sexism. It could not be more obvious and explicit in its statement, but that there's been a transformation of the understanding of racism and sexism such that you cannot be in this. And in fact, to not do this would be racist and sexist if the outcome was a white guy. Then we would know that there was racism.
The thing I think is just strange, I just grew, I mean, obviously you believe what you grew up. This is what we talked about earlier in the podcast. I grew up, Martin Luther King was the person that we hailed as like the greatest social justice revolutionary. Mm-hmm. And his whole thing was, I have a dream where my kids will be judged not by the color of their skin, but the quality of their character. This is the antithesis of that, which is I'm going to look at a pool of people based on the color of their skin. And I know that some people think that in order to undo racism, you have to go racist the other way for a period of time. But I really hope we eventually get to that Martin Luther King thing of, you got brown eyes. I don't give a shit if you're the Supreme Court justice and you have brown eyes. You know what I mean? You have blonde hair. I don't care. I'd love to get to the point where no one was upset because someone was black. No one was overjoyed because someone was black. It was just a physical feature that didn't matter. And a black woman got nominated and we all go, that's because they're the best qualified candidate, and they're going to be awesome because they're the best qualified candidate.
Yeah.
And I actually think to some extent this announcement is almost offensive to the black woman who does get the nomination. Like, don't make this announcement and then nominate a black woman and say, I looked at everybody and this is the best person for the job.
Yeah, you're almost invalidating. You're competing against 6% of the candidates at this point, which is incredible. That you have effectively eliminated over 90% of the competition doesn't get to compete. It's.
I just think it's all. I feel like there have been people with first person experience of this, successful black people have said people just assume I'm where I'm at now because of affirmative action.
But there's no assumption at this point.
This Supreme Court justice, there is.
You've removed the assumption from that.
Yes. Well, that's what I'm saying. I feel like it's almost. I feel like, and I could be wrong, this is worse for the person being nominated.
Oh, they don't care. It's a lifetime appointment. They're fine. They'll take the job.
But I'm saying just nominate the same person and don't come out ahead of time and say.
See, I understand that take, but that's like, oh, we're going to play the optics of it now. Don't do this is my actual criticism.
Sorry, I'm saying don't do this. And then when it is a black woman, it'll be because she was the best candidate.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And by the way, have some faith that will happen without your heavy-handed intervention. You know what I mean? I don't believe that it should happen if everybody, I don't believe that the universe, it should happen, 6% of the time? You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. From now on out, it should happen whatever percentage. That's roughly what we would expect. It's crazy, man. I don't have people in my life that really think this way, so I don't get a chance to talk to them. But I am familiar with the direction that this heads, which is they go back throughout history and make the arguments. I think you have it's just when pushed. In the few conversations that I've had, that falls apart very quickly because it's like, wait a second. I don't even want to break down the whole argument because now I'm arguing against a phantom. But there's a couple things directions that I try to head with this, which is, okay, you're saying that this group has a history of oppression and this group does not. Fine. Let's say that I accept that off the jump, which I don't necessarily for men versus women. I just watched, in fact, We Were Soldiers in Vietnam, and everybody killed in that movie is a guy on both sides. And there was a draft to do that. So I don't accept that narrative on its face. But if I do say take the black-white dichotomy, there's a fallacy of division, which says that because this group has a trait, that each individual in this group must have a trait. But of course, what if they nominate, for instance, a grown-up Barack Obama's daughter? Like, is this who we're trying to stop the oppression of, somebody who has been so close to the levers of power their entire life, who grew up well taken care of, rich, in a 2-parent home, and now we will exclude the poor white person from, literally just found out that somebody that I know, I won't go into detail, grew up in poverty, evicted multiple times, single mother, white guy, straight white male. Like, can you not see that there's a fallacy of division occurring there? Who is it? You don't know him that well.
Okay.
Is it me? Yeah, so there's the fallacy of division that's going on there, which is you're not actually elevating an oppressed individual. You're treating group identity as the primary experience, and not just group identity, one facet or 3 facets essentially of group identity as the primary way through which we experience life, which I would argue if you're Barack Obama's daughter versus this person, that does not constitute your experience of oppression in the slightest. So that's an issue. And then the other one is that, like, at what point, well, I'm not going to argue against someone who isn't here. We can do it another day.
All right.
Sweet. I recently heard the conversation Charlie had with Chris on Modern Wisdom. In that, you mentioned something about contending with the negativity of social media and how, I apologize if I get this wrong, it's easier or might be easier to avoid the things that trigger but not necessarily better because you are not facing them head on. I've been off social media for over a year, and for me that includes Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and LinkedIn. I never got on TikTok, but I do watch YouTube, and the only other site that I used that's remotely close is Goodreads, but I use that to track my reading. I add that because YouTube does have its fair share of crappy things, so I haven't gone cold turkey. Since getting off of them, I've gone from a 0 book a year guy to 63 in 2021.
Wow.
And that has now turned into a non-negotiable everyday habit.
Wow.
I've also been playing more music, getting involved with activities that are geared towards helping people and overall doing things that are of benefit compared to my pre-social life. I have felt good about my decision leaving because those platforms were the main source of negativity in my life at the time, but Like an ex-smoker, which I am 2 years now, I feel that pull to go back, and it's even worse than the smoking pull. I know that going back to smoking cigarettes is not something someone should do if they quit in an attempt to contend with their weaknesses, but when I feel a similar pull to social media, I can't help but think it's best to keep taking the easy route because I may not be the right personality for those platforms, even though they may make some career decisions easier. Should a person just stay away from those environments, or does it make you weaker in the long run?
No, just say
stay
no.
away. Stay away.
Just say no.
I think what they're saying is that you or Chris said that to stay away from social media is to avoid your problems. Like the social media causes a problem, insecurity or whatever. I'm going to be honest, I didn't watch it, but from the question, I'm getting the sense that someone said it's like a Band-Aid. It doesn't actually solve the inner problem.
Yes.
But I think the counter argument is you do want to solve the inner problem, but you never have to go back to social media.
Yes.
It's like avoid it, keep reading books. Sounds like your life is way better off. Mm-hmm. And then also wrestle with, in a different way, whatever insecurity Instagram did bring up in you.
Yeah. I think that's probably what I was saying at the time. And I do not think you should get back on social media. No. Certainly not in order to test yourself or to agitate insecurities or FOMO and then to address that.
Bro, I'm not on there. Yeah, I've muted so many of the people I follow on Instagram. I don't have a Twitter or LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. I think it's a great call.
Probably what I was talking about is that I am, compared to most people, very secure. Like I feel comfortable standing out. I feel comfortable being different. I feel comfortable being criticized. And
Must
then
be nice.
And then on social media, I've experienced that. I was like, I can handle that. And then at times I've experienced that at a level that was too much for me. And it was like, oh, I thought I'd wrestled with that totally. And I realized I'm just used to containing it in these amounts, in these ways. Mm-hmm. But that's like, I don't know. You don't need to draw the ire of the entire world in order to be able to handle the ire of the entire world. Just don't be on social media. For me, there has been a silver lining to those clouds, but that doesn't mean that I want it to rain from those clouds. And now I torture this analogy. Like, because there's been a silver lining, there's been a silver lining.
Did you see me just trying to, what the fuck?
There's been a silver lining to this negative situation.
I understand.
And that doesn't mean I am grateful for the way that my life has gone, but I would not advise other people to put themselves in similar situations.
There's a better way to wrestle with that problem. You know what I mean? Like if your goal is to work on being secure or your confidence or your jealousy and envy or whatever it is, I'm sure it'd be a better way than getting on Instagram. There's a way to tackle it more head on.
There is, but let me tell you, I don't know that it is possible to feel the weight of the world and a reputational destruction in the way that social media will challenge you. Like that's not
what this person's doing. This person is looking at social media and becoming jealous of people. They're not saying that they were getting canceled and so they fled. They're saying that being on these platforms just made me too involved in looking at other people with envy. Mm-hmm. You're saying that there's something to be said for when you get canceled and come out the other side.
Yeah, I have, yes.
That's not an experience people are going to have unless they're a public figure anyway.
Sure. Just don't do social media. We're in agreement here.
Yeah,
it's just,
you're good. You're doing it. Congrats on 63 books in a year. That's awesome.
Great. That's all I got.
All right, let's go to.
We're not getting asked a lot of questions. We used to have like 5 of these.
We do them in. Yeah. If there's any that you want to add from any of the Patreons, feel free. But for the majority of the Patreon, what are we covering?
We're going to talk about dating for the long term versus hookups, what it's like on the other end of the Charlie and Ben parasocial relationship.
What it's like to be us?
Yeah, what it's like to be you guys.
What is it like to be?
Of course.
And then
I'm very familiar with that.
These are 2 topics I know well so far.
And then getting over anxiety of dating somebody new.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So if you guys want to see those, we're going to hop over to Patreon now and answer them. Thank you again, guys. I do appreciate all the parasocial relationships out there. They help us keep this podcast going. And even if you don't feel it and you just like the conversations that we have, we've got more over on Patreon. Any dollar amount gets you access and keeps this podcast going. This is how we pay for it.
And I even have a genuine friend who's opted out of hanging out and just hangs in and watches the podcast now. So you guys, your parasocial relationship is even better than a real social relationship.
I've lost a friend. All right, we'll see you guys over Patreon. Take care.